Hi, how's this today? I tried to do this last night. Sorry, it's the goddamn phone. I tried to do this last night, but the connection was really choppy. Looks okay. It's counting. 28, 29, 30 seconds. Yeah, okay. I don't seem to be chopping or it's waiting to catch up to me. No remix version today. Um, I was gonna do a video last night just to talk about some of the books I've been reading. Before I get to that, though, I was reading this. I started in on this three-issue miniseries as part of my reading last night, and as usual, I love the I love kind of the Cat Ironwood uh, letter to the viewers. In this particular one, she's introducing us to some of the comic readers, of who their fans are, people that have kind of got in touch with them and said that they're fans from all parts of the world, various age groups, although it seems all to be, I think it looks like there was about from 19 all the way up to 32, somewhere around there. So, all kind of a range of ages, and one particular person, um, Alan Elliott from Buffalo, New York, has collected comics for 15 years, runs a flea market stand for a local comic book store, and sent us a gift of 29 Eclipse comics we had listed as sold out due to the flood, which, if you know the Eclipse history, they did have a flood, and it damaged their offices. They had to move offices, damaged a lot of their stock. Sent us a gift of 29 Eclipse comics we had listed as sold out due to the flood. These went to make up our own office copy stock, and the excess have been put in for sale. So thank you, Alan, for helping us out. I really like that. Again, one of the great things of kind of going back in time with these companies. I love the communication. I love the kind of identification with the fans, and that the fans actually kind of came and helped out. I thought that was just really nice. So it was. I thought I'd share that with you. And if you do follow me on Twitter, I did take a picture of that, and I posted it to my timeline, so you can open up the photo and zoom in and kind of read about all the fans that they kind of covered in this one letter, or this one kind of editorial page. Um, so today I wanted to talk a little bit about two series. Wanted to tackle this Keith Laumer's Retief, I think is Retief, I think is how they said you pronounce it, and wanted to touch a little on the good old the Barbarella there. Maybe we'll start with this one. So, uh, I've always been familiar with the character. I've seen the movie. I did. I have picked up a couple issues of the new series, but it's always been a collection I've wanted to read. I just haven't found it for a decent price. And if you saw the trip I took to Calgary, is when I found this particular volume, and at a really good price. So I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm nearing the halfway mark on it. Um, and the one thing that's kind of striking me about the entire sordid affair so far is how kind of stream of conscience the whole story is. It just kind of flows, and she gets from one scenario, kind of takes one little path, and that leads her to the next scenario. So it's not that uh, there's a story. I mean, there's these mini stories within it, but some of them don't quite conclude. It's almost like an exquisite corpse kind of scenario where you have a bunch of creators, and the next creator is seeing the last couple of panels and using that as a jumping off point. So you get this kind of uh, steamroller kind of, hey, Damien, how's it going? You get this kind of steamroller effect when it comes to the story. It's just kind of always propelling. There's a couple of kind of lulls here and there, not lulls in kind of interest, more lulls in kind of she has a moment to have sex with a robot, for example, or that sort of thing, and then it kind of continues into the next element of the story. But that's one thing I wasn't really expecting. This just go, go, go. Here's the stories. Uh, she's just kind of getting herself in one scenario. She's kind of been woken up into this world, and it's just active, and she's trying to keep up with it and trying to navigate through it. But there's no real. These aren't complaints, by the way. There's no real nothing has really been mapped out so far as a completion. Like, here's the beginning of the story, introducing you to the character. Here's the mission our character is on. Here's what the end goal is. It's just, here's our character. Here's the world. Let's go and explore this world. There's parts of it where the art kind of reminds me of First Kingdom, although not as dense, but that kind of little bit rougher style when it comes to the art. Again, not a complaint. Um, Very unique. I don't really know what I was expecting from it. I know that I wasn't quite expecting this. Um, I'm enjoying it so far. I can't say that, honestly, I can't say that there's much that sticks with me throughout it. When you do read some of these longer series and stuff, there'll be kind of elements of it that kind of stick with you. This one I really feel like I'm just thrown in there with her as far as just navigating this whole thing that's kind of going on. There's some enjoyable moments. She does some, you know, as much as she kind of uses her sexuality at some points, she also just uses her ability to kind of, take control and kick some ass. There's a lot of kind of Three's Company type of mishaps to some degree, as far as like in this one that I just flipped past. She enters a world and there's this queen, and she's now captured, and someone that's actually turning on the queen to rescue her. She doesn't see it as such. She kind of attacks him and ends up killing him. So kind of like a misunderstanding that, were you trying to save me so I could become your slave? No, I was actually trying to save you. I'm actually turning on my queen, and I'm going to kind of put myself out there for you, Barbarella, that sort of thing. So it's pretty good so far. It's not one of those, like, I've read it in a couple of different chunks, two at two different sittings. I think I've gotten to this point. It's not one of those that I pick up and I can't put down. It does reach a point where it feels like I feel a little sluggish reading it, so it's a little easier to put it down. Um, but yeah, so far, oops, so far so good. Sorry, just notifications coming up. Thanks for the retweet there, Damien. That just came to my attention. Um, so that's that. Really good format. I will say, sorry, work messages. I will say that I do like the format. I do like the hardcover format. I do like the whole presentation of it. Part of me wishes that I would have kind of picked up maybe the little bit of a bigger volume of it. It says it's adapted by Kelly Sue DeConnick, Damien. I don't know if that means that she helped with the translation herself, and not really speaking French. I've never seen any of the French editions myself, even online. So I think it's translated well. It doesn't seem, yeah, adapted. Yes, exactly. It doesn't seem. It doesn't seem sluggish. It doesn't seem difficult. It doesn't seem. I haven't encountered anything where the dialogue seems clumsy. It's all made sense in its own kind of dreamy way, um, which I guess is kind of the appeal of it, right? It really is kind. It really does play out like a dream. Yeah, maybe she adjusted the story. That could be, or maybe she kind of. Yeah, I don't really know. They don't really give. Let me just double check, but I'm pretty sure that they don't really give a intro to Kelly Sue DeConnick and what she did. They do have an introduction by Nicholas Winding Refn from, uh, um, that Drive movie fame. A little intro by him, but let me just double check. Yeah, no, there's nothing at the beginning or the end by Kelly Sue, just as to what maybe her role was. Um, so yeah, as far as I know, Damien, the translation seems okay, but again, not knowing the original text, it's hard for me to say. The one that kind of snuck up on me and was actually fairly easy to dive into once I did was this six issue Keith Laumer's Retief, Retief, Retief. I can't remember how they said to pronounce it. Anyway, Retief. Let's say Retief. This series kind of snuck up on me. And Paulo, how are you? One of the things that snuck up on me so pleasantly, was how enjoyable this was, and how much I really do love Dennis Fujitaki's art and Jan Sternad's writing. Now, in this one, even Jan himself, in one of the letters pages, he admits that it's really just we're really just taking from the original books. I'm unfamiliar with Keith Laumer until this. This does make me a little bit curious about trying out one of the books just to see what it reads as. One of the things that he does say is that Laumer's writing, especially when it comes to these alien races, that they did. There's a different alien race that they deal with in each issue. Our main character is a kind of a diplomat. He works for an agency, a diplomatic agency that tries to almost kind of mediate conflict between races, whether that's humans and an alien species or two alien species themselves. Um, and they also deal with like land claims. So in this case, in one of the issues, there's a planetoid that they're dealing with, kind of who's going to claim the land. There's a mining agency that's claiming the land, and then some fat cat comes in to. He's heard good things about it and knows that the potential for money is there, so he tries to flex to steal the land from this smaller company, basically. But apparently, what they say about Laumer's original writing, yeah, completely forgotten now, is exactly right, Damien. And apparently there was a lot of these books, and the appeal for them was the kind of thought that he put into each alien species' way of communicating and kind of how they presented themselves. And I used this example in this one. The first kind of species that were, or alien race rather, that were introduced to. Um, Let me just see. I'll do the example again here if I can find some of the. Sorry, it's another moment of must see TV while I um a cooling drink to sample a true Grossian beverage, not to enjoy my poor offerings, a pain in the digestive sacs, to express regret, not to worry, to pour it out and let me decide if I like it. Just that style for that first species, I really liked how kind of poetic it sound. There's another species we're introduced to, or a race rather, that we're introduced to where their vocals are kind of written in kind of a song type of form, so they sort of sing. Um, Really, really great, actually. And again, I cannot stress enough my love for Fujitaki's artwork. Some of the art in this thing, it's just beautiful stuff. Let me see. I think it was in issue 2 here. Just the use of black and white. Yeah, here we go. So this panel specifically, again, if you follow me on Twitter, just the idea of like that's the sun. That's right. It's the both of them from Dalgota, Damien, which is also what kind of appealed to me when I was reading Dalgota. How much I was enjoying it. When I looked up both of them and saw what they'd done, Dennis Fujitaki hasn't done a ton. Sternad has done a lot, and a lot with Corbin, but this has been on a list of mine for quite a while just because I wanted to see more of his art. But that ability to, you know, really show you uh, what's taking place within a scene. The sun is in his eyes, and his hand is clearly shading the sun from his eyes, and there's no mistaking that. Kind of the use of those panels there too. Uh, Lots of white space and You don't need a ton of detail, even though there is quite a bit of detail in these. One of the things that he uses quite a bit of as well too is when there's a gunshot, it kind of breaks through. This one doesn't do it. There's some where it breaks right through the panel itself, so there's a white space on both ends. I find that very effective. It's just a neat kind of design element almost to it. Um, Out of the six, I'd say issue three was my least favorite, but the rest of them, it just did, and that was mainly just because issue three seemed a little clunky. There didn't seem to be. I mean, there was a story there for sure. Um, there was a story in there for sure. It just didn't do it for me the way that the first two had. But the rest of the series was fantastic. And then looking into Mad Dog Graphics, this was Jan Sternad's short-lived company. They did this. They did the Ted McKeever. What the heck is the guy's name? I'm blanking on it. Eddie Current. They did the 12 issue Eddie Current series. They did a Harlan Ellison Corbin book. Was it called Mac and Me? I think. I don't remember what it was called again. But they didn't do a lot. Um, but now that they're on my radar, I do want to pick up the rest of anything else I can find from Mad Dog itself. Um, so highly recommended. Just a really really great read if you can find it. It did take me a little while. I did eventually have to order it online. I found a really great eBay seller who's based in Canada, so shipping was next to nothing for me. Who I bought these from, as well as Valkyrie, and as well as a couple of other things. He also threw in a one shot um, Retief story as well to different artist. Yeah, still Jan Sternad, but Steve Vance. And yes, Damien, they are, as much as there's an arc between them because they do have the same characters and you do see some character development through the six issues, each story does stand on its own. So if you did find one issue, you'd be fine. It wouldn't be too confusing. Rasa, how the hell are you? It wouldn't be too confusing. You'd still get a good sense of the world and the characters. The other thing that I would say about it is Retief is an interesting character because it's this idea of like the tough guy, the stereotypical tough guy, going in and like beating the hell out of people to get his point across. He really does a good job of kind of manipulating situations and playing these games with people to kind of get an outcome that he wants without using kind of physical force. There is a couple of punch ups throughout the series, but it's not that his first interaction is he's the strong silent type. He pulls a gun. Part of the appeal of it is he's a strong silent type, as in he doesn't feel like he needs to fill every moment with dialogue. He kind of lets things play out. One of the final issues is a perfect example of that. Actually, I think it was issue six, is the perfect example of it. He really manipulates the whole situation for sure, but through most of the comic he's not really talking too much. He's letting everybody else do the talking around him, and he's kind of seeing an opening and kind of coming to a conclusion that's going to be beneficial. um, I really like that, especially now because I'm doing more classes myself into conflict resolution and mediation and stuff like that. It's kind of a path that I'm heading down with this job, the education side of it anyway. So that whole world has really been appealing to me to sort of see that kind of portrayed in a story. I really do appreciate. I do really like it that he's still kind of a little underhanded. He still drinks heavily. He still does all this kind of stuff. So he's still that kind of stereotypical movie tough guy persona, but just goes about it in a different way. Yeah. So let's see. What else did I? And I didn't show you issue number five, and there's issue number five, and these are the characters that kind of have a sing song pattern to the way that they speak, and you can see that there by their word balloons. And they're these giant bird-like creatures. Um, so when Sternad was talking about in some of the letters, again, it's another magazine or it's another comic where the letters pages are pretty fantastic. You're getting a lot of feedback from the readers. Lots of people love it. Some people are familiar with Laumer's books. And one of the things that he says is that was the hardest part, to kind of adapt these stories into a one issue. That's something they always wanted to do. They wanted to kind of present these just as a single issue so they could kind of hit a bunch of notes. And he said, as far as his job as a writer, he said Laumer makes it pretty easy because we just directly took stuff from the books and put them into the comic. So it was more Dennis Fujitaki's name is listed first because he's the one that's kind of steering the whole thing, and Sternad is plopping in dialogue a la Stan Lee, I guess, to some degree, from the book right onto the pages, right onto the panels themselves, which is why he's given himself second billing. Uh, but yeah, surprisingly enjoyable. When I read the first issue, I did like it. I just wasn't sure if it was going to be for me. But the more I kind of dived into it and more I got into the world, it's just one of those books that kind of reveals itself to you as you're getting into it a little more. You start to understand things. You start to see these kind of moments occurring naturally, and the fact that all these moments kind of occur naturally is really nice. Um, but again, I mean, Fujitaki, just his art just really blows me away. Sorry, Damien, I missed that comment there. I did see it just fade away. Um, his art just really blows me away. There's something very Canadian looking about it. And I think I mentioned this in the video when I talked about the first issue. There was a show called The Raccoons, and there's some facial features in this. I'm curious if he worked on any of those Canadian cartoons. Where there's something about this art that reminds me of that style. Um, yeah, so I can't emphasize that enough. If you do see it, give it a shot. Even if you just find a single issue, you'll still get something out of it. And then just to kind of briefly touch on it, I don't want to go into too much detail. If you do want more detail, I would suggest you go and watch Larassa's video where she talked about this in greater detail. I just wanted to touch on my blueberry world here. So I'm pretty much done volume one of blueberry that I recently got. Did I even show these? I'll show them in a minute. I'll just kind of pull them up in front of the camera here. We'll talk briefly about this in the last. I think I got about 5 more minutes before I have to excuse myself. It's another world that's fairly easy, especially if you're a spaghetti western fan. I found it fairly easy to just really get into the world. I really like his character. I really like this first book so far. I especially loved when we kind of get introduced into, what was her name? Pearl, was that her name? In the second book, in basically the second part of Blueberry Book One. Um, the art is just stunning, and Rasa mentioned it in her video as well. The coloring in this book is just incredible. I find it works so well. Like, even just looking at it as like an abstract without looking at the details, just kind of blurring your eyes a little bit. All those kind of hits of color through those 2 pages are amazing. So this is clearly one of those instances of artist, colorist, writer all kind of coming into their own and really just running with it. It's a fun book to read. It really does hit a lot of book two, the $500,000 Man, book two here. It really just hits a lot of the right notes, especially being a spaghetti western fan. There's a lot of things that you'll find familiar. Is it kind of breaking new ground within the genre? No, but not everything has to, right? Some things are just good genre pieces, and yes, they do follow the tropes of the genre, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that as long as it's an enjoyable ride. It is great to see, um, sorry, it is great to see Mobius's art, of course, and it's just great to have these books, period. So here we'll just do a little quick run through. Uh, Sorry, Damien. It's tough on the phone. I am trying to see the comments, but it's like when I look away for a second, they disappear. And there's no way for me to bring them back, unfortunately. Sorry, I'm not ignoring everybody. I'm just missing some of them. Um, so there was a guy in town who had these. He's had these kind of in his basement in his collection for a number of years, not really ever knowing what to do with them. He's not particularly a fan. Um, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm missing the brilliance exactly. Um, yeah, Charlier's baby that Giraud illustrates. I would agree with that. It definitely seems to be. Yes, it really does seem to be. He was just the artist on this series. But nothing wrong with that either, right? It's nice when you have a pairing that works, as in Fujitaki and Sternad. So this guy had these in his basement for a long time. Nobody really, he didn't really know what to price them at. He didn't really know who to sell them at. If anybody would be interested, I've done a bunch of dealings with him now, so we worked out a great deal on these. So I got Blueberry 1, Blueberry 2, Blueberry 3, Blueberry 4, the really great cover there, uh, Blueberry 5, and then another pretty awesome cover, Marshall Blueberry, and Young Blueberry book number 2 from Comcat Comics, who were also somebody else. Were they Dargod as well too? I don't remember who they were. And then Young Blueberry book 3. I haven't. I've just briefly flipped through one of those. I haven't started reading those yet. I figured I'd just get right into the Blueberry series itself. And then Mobius 3, The Airtight Garage. Mobius 6, Ferragonesia, and Other Strange Stories. And finally, Mobius 8, which is Mississippi River. And I believe this is the character that Earl Grey was talking about in a video, and his name is escaping me. Character that apparently most did take over. Jim Cutlass. And just check that out there. That's a beaut. So from Earl Grey's video, again, if you haven't seen that, just check out Earl Grey. He'll have a video on Jim Cutlass and that story. Mobius eventually takes over the character and does both writing and the art, and it kind of takes off into kind of a little bit of a different headspace as far as the story goes as it progresses. So kind of starts off as a little more of a spaghetti western and kind of takes off a little bit a la Jodorowsky, maybe not to that degree, but something like that. So I'm really curious when I was looking for Cutlass stuff, even on the site that you sent the link to there, La Raza, on Twitter. I looked for Cutlass there, and there hasn't really been anything that's been translated to English beyond this. Um, Blueberry there's a lot more books in the series. Yeah, and that's the thing. Blueberry itself, it's an unbelievable. Yeah, and that's the thing, Damien. Some of them have been really ridiculously priced. And I mean, unlike when I saw them in Calgary, he wasn't selling them at cover price, but I did get a damn good deal on them. Like a really good deal on them. Um, Blueberry is quite a world. It's quite an undertaking to get into. There's a lot to read. So just to kind of finish off that thought, Rasa had sent me a link to a site where you could read some of this stuff, and I looked for some Jim Cutlass, and Jim Cutlass hasn't really been done in English except for this one book. So it's something that's kind of lacking for us here, or us who just speak English, unfortunately. Um, I would like to try to get it somehow. I don't know. I mean, who knows with all this stuff? I mean, all these kind of guys. I wonder how well Dark Horse is doing on their Mobius books that they're putting out. Um, who knows, right? How popular is the European stuff here in North America? Yeah, publishing Death Year Paulo, so it's probably a hard sell. Yeah, it's true to some degree, like it's not a yeah, it's just not a genre that just always does so well. I mean, unless you're Clint Eastwood, I suppose, but reading about it for sure, I can't imagine that it's something that would be a cash cow by any stretch. And then attaching some strange Europeans' names to the books. I don't know how much appeal there is. That's it. It's 30 minutes. My 30 minutes are up. Gentlemen, time, please. Thanks very much for tuning in. Paulo, Damien, Rasa, thanks very much. I always appreciate having people watch. Sorry I did miss some of your comments. I'll check them out later. Um, so, yes, give it a shot if you see it. And this has been great so far. I just read the first of 3 issues. I don't know much of the world. I think she comes from the Airboy universe. Is that correct? I only have a couple of issues of that comic, and I've never read it myself. But it is Glacy on art here. So, how can you go wrong? Chuck Dixon and Paul Glacy. An interesting read so far. Sort of a Captain America type of she's been frozen and asleep for whatever it was 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, and now she's revived into this world and kind of trying to navigate her new world. Um, yeah, so that's it. Thanks very much, everybody, and we'll talk to you.